Hey, we're back again. It's Mike Brennan with Matt Roush, and we're doing another segment of MITech TV. And we're not announcing news. Actually, it was announced last week, but we have one of the major participants from the press release on the show, Keith Donovan, formerly the president of Airfoil, which is I've known Airfoil. Airfoil started this 1 month ahead of me or behind me. I can never remember.
I think it was 1999, wasn't it?
No, 2000, year 2000,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
And I started MITech News, I think it was in March of 2000, and Airfoil started the month before or the month after. But I've known Lisa Vallee Smith and Janet Tyler, who co-founded the group for all that time. In fact, I knew them back when I was at the Free Press, and they were, Janet was, I don't know if Janet was at Franco or not, but I think, but Lisa was.
Lisa was, that's right.
All these bodies moving around. So, but anyway, last week, Lisa announced that she's stepping down as CEO, and Keith is stepping up to take that role. And congratulations, Keith.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So major changes ahead for Airfoil, right? I'm just kidding. So, what's in store? I mean, you kind of steady forward motion. You're going to keep going with what's been going on, or what do you have in mind?
Yeah, well, so we started back in 2000, of course, and like you said, you've known Lisa for a long time, and it's been 21, almost 22 years with her leading the business. And through that time, I've worked with Lisa and I've worked with Airfoil for 15 of those years. So I've been around for quite some time. Lisa and I have worked very closely hand in hand in the business for those last 15 years. And we're very like-minded in terms of the direction of the business. So there are not any radical changes or shifts coming because we've been working together for so long. But we're continuing to, I think, diversify our service offerings. Most importantly, a few years ago, probably about 3 years ago, we added the digital marketing element to our services, and that remains a pretty big part. But we're trying to integrate those services into the more traditional PR services that we've offered for 20 years. So we've got some work to do in terms of aligning all of those services, kind of diversifying what we bring to clients on a daily basis. So that's going to be a big piece of the focus as we look to the next, couple years. But, we're not going to make any radical shifts. We're going to stay true to who we are as Airfoil, keep focusing on great client service and, steady growth as we move forward.
I know the original client base of Airfoil was heavily in the tech space.
That's right.
Sort of the original .com boom. How has that changed over the years?
Yeah, we still have a fair amount of tech business. That's still really the kind of foundation, and I think the thing that makes Airfoil unique, especially in this market. So we still have a strong foundation of technology business at Airfoil, but we have diversified. You're right. So now you'll find us working in, automotive, of course, healthcare, some financial services, and of course all areas of technology. And that really takes us into so many industries these days. But it is a bit more diverse, I think, than it was even 10 years ago.
And let's talk about, I mean, I've watched a lot of the PR firms evolve over the time. Brian Edwards and Jeff Lambert are good friends of mine over on the other side of the state.
Sure. And
I watched their big event that they've really blossomed. Now, of course, Brian is no longer with them. He's with publisher of MI Biz, but I mean, Jeff Lambert has turned that into a huge regional operation. And of course, Lisa did the same with Airfoil. And they've really evolved into investor relations and all sorts of other things. I mean, where do you see Airfoil heading? I mean, obviously you started out with tech. You're still a big tech company. But I mean, there are other areas that you're kind of taking a look at, eyeballing, that sort of thing?
Well, technology is still our focus. But like I said a moment ago, it takes us into a lot of of different industries. Certainly the automotive work here in the Detroit market, you can't look past that. That's, been a big piece of our business for the last few years. And certainly that's going to be a big part of it moving forward. We'd like to even probably make that a little bit bigger piece of our business. Recently over the last few years, we started to get more involved in healthcare. And in fact, we represent a smaller health system north of the Metro Detroit area. And that's been wonderful for our business. I think that's really allowed us to, especially through the pandemic, that was a critical piece of our business. So I think really the goal is diversification, right? Is to have our hands in a number of different areas. And I think that's served us well even over the years, as certain industries have struggled, through different economic downturns. We've been able to lean on others to kind of support the business as it goes forward. So I think that's been a good strategy for us. I think that'll continue to be the focus. And importantly, I think we're going to be focused on, diversifying those service offerings that we bring to clients. I mentioned the digital piece of things. We really started 20 years ago as a traditional PR firm, media relations, PR, that was the focus. Today, we're really divided into 4 practice areas. We have brand strategy. We, of course, have PR, still core to our work. We have digital marketing, and we have creative services. So a lot of social media, content development, multimedia content development, which I think is going to continue to be big in our industry and play a major role in the years ahead.
Yeah, I know for businesses trying to get their message out, that's part of what I do for a living here at Lawrence Tech.
Sure.
The traditional media is, it's the era of the incredible shrinking newsroom, and social media is really where it's at right now. Talk about that a little bit. How do you chase that around while maintaining a sense of, legitimacy and honesty and all that good stuff?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think you're right. It is the era of shrinking newsrooms. We've been seeing that for a number of years. And I think that's why it's so important that we look to these different mediums, these different channels to help reach these audiences for our clients. Social media, of course, has been a big piece of that. And I think what you've seen is this shift towards authentic communication. I think social media provides that opportunity for brands to really communicate in an authentic way to their audiences, to be
authentic. That's the word I was looking for that I couldn't find. So
yeah.
Authenticity.
Kind of unwind the marketing.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah. So that's really become prominent. And but even that has shifted, right? When we started getting into social media, I don't know, half dozen or more years ago, brands, it took a little while for them to shift the way in which they used social media and those platforms. And I think these days, the nature of the content's different, right? You don't have to put out these highly produced videos and this really scripted content. It can be very casual. It can be very natural. And I think brands are getting more and more accustomed to that.
Are you doing anything in the streaming area?
We're not doing a whole lot of that. I think that's a real area of opportunity and growth, though, in the next couple of years. I think there's going to be a lot of focus on that. And that's certainly something, we're going to take a closer look at. We haven't had too many clients, come to us with requests around streaming, but, I can see that coming. I can see that certainly picking up.
All right. Well, 6 years ago, in the middle of when we first started this podcast, Mike, can you believe it? We were kind of in a jobless or job light recovery, and so I always used to ask what became known as the Roush question of every business we had on the podcast, and that's, are you hiring, and if so, in what skill sets? Well, these days, everybody's hiring, but tell me a little bit about your hiring right now. What skill sets are you are looking for, and are you having trouble finding particular skill sets?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. You're right. Everybody is hiring. And frankly, I think that's a big part of my focus as we go forward here, is to really make sure we've got the right people, the right team, doing the right type of work for our clients. We are certainly hiring, We're looking for account executives right now. We're looking for another social media strategist. We just talked about social media. We actually just hired recently a new editorial director. In fact, she started today. So that's pretty exciting for our agency. But we're always looking for good talent. And I think with, the way the job market has been over the last couple of years, you have to always have your eyes open for good talent. And I think the Great Recession, or the Great Resignation, I should say, has kind of hit our industry pretty hard. We've seen a little bit of that over the last couple months. I think we've been able to weather that storm pretty well. Nonetheless, we certainly have a couple holes to fill yet, and we're looking for some good people. So hey, if you see any, know of anyone, send them our way.
Okay.
All right, and to do so, what would that website address be?
Sure, you can go to airfoilgroup.com and go to our careers page. You can find the job postings on our site. And you can also email me directly at donovan@airfoilgroup.com. Always love to hear from great talent.
One last question I wanted to ask you is, obviously with the pandemic, a lot of places went to a remote or hybrid work setting.
Yeah.
Where are your offices physically located, and where are you right now in terms of having people back in the office?
Sure. Yeah. So like everyone else throughout the pandemic, we went fully remote. Our offices are in Royal Oak. We're right on Main Street in downtown Royal Oak. And as of March 1st, we've gone back to a hybrid work model. So the whole staff is here 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm actually here today doing a couple things, but the whole staff is here on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so far, I think that's going pretty well for us. It's nice to have everyone back in the office to be able to collaborate with your colleagues and just kind of have that those spontaneous conversations that you sort of miss throughout the day.
Yeah, so one thing I miss about the old life in the newspaper world, where you had all these people on the pod surrounding you, and you had the more of the collaboration kind of thing. It's been a long time since I've been in the newspaper world, but that's a real important value, I think, is. And the virtual only goes so far. You still need physical contact, and
Right.
And it was like you say, the spontaneity of your come up with a crazy idea. Let me run it by you and see what happens, kind of thing. And
yeah, that's sort of where we are at Lawrence Tech too. Is that we are in the office, I don't know, 3 days a week now, 4 days a week, most of us. But if you really are in the middle of a heavy, say, writing project where you're head down, really plowing on something, they almost encourage you to be at home for that, so there's no distraction.
Right.
So it's an interesting time that we were able to have. I'm hoping for a while the best of both worlds. That's the one thing I miss about journalism as opposed to PR is I miss that newsroom experience. At WWJ with the police scanners going off and people running around and.
Well, you feed off of that energy, right?
Frequent use of colorful language and all that good stuff.
No, I agree with you. I think it creates a real sense of energy in the office, and we enjoy that. We kind of feed off of that. I think it feeds the creativity, but it's also kind of nice to be able to be at home and put your head down and focus when you need to. But throughout the pandemic, I think we talked about recruiting a bit. We've hired remote workers from, the person who I mentioned started today, she's in Philadelphia. We have great people in Denver and in Tampa now. So the makeup of the staff looks a little different than it did a couple of years ago. So there's some like culture building that has to happen because we're just operating differently. But that culture has always really been critical to Airfoil and our success. And we've always tried to maintain that really energetic, fun culture where people are learning a lot from one another. So we're still doing that. We just need to think about that a little bit differently in terms of how that happens.